Today we are going to be focusing on tendon repairs. Flexor tendon repairs are a really important part of a hand surgeon's practice. That can be plastic surgery, that can be orthopedic hand. Either way, you still need to be able to do a good, robust hand repair to restore function and form. So, we're going to cover the modified Kessler to start with. Extended session from about 10:45, from 11 o'clock actually, will be on some of the more specific principles, such as principles of tendon repair, mechanisms of action, and a few more extra details. But we're going to start with the modified Kessler. So I'm going to start with the diagram, and then we're going to do a simulated tendon repair, see it in practice, get some extra tips. So whenever you're starting with tendon repairs, people often ask you to draw them. So you need to be able to draw a tendon. So just draw two cylinders, one with the lumen visible and one without. Draw them nice and big so people can see. So when you draw your tendon repairs, a dashed line means you're inside the tendon, and a straight continuous line means you're outside. So you have to do a core repair and an epitendinous repair. The core repair we're going to do is the modified Kessler. There are other core repairs. This includes the Adelaide, the cruciate, and the modified Kessler. There are others, but those are the three that I typically use in my working plastic surgery practice. I'm going to start with the modified Kessler. I think it's probably the easiest one to get your head around if you haven't done one before, and we'll go through some extra nuances just to really be sure. So let's say you're sitting on this side, my stickman drawing, you're sitting here. Your first bite has to enter through the substance. So you're going to go in here, and as I said, when you're inside the tendon, it's a dashed line, and you come out on top. You're then going to place your suture, the needle, go side to side through here and come all the way out here. By coming out on top here and going in the side here, it creates a visible loop like this. So you go in and come out, and then you go in just in front, side to side all the way. This is in the central substance of the three-dimensional structure, and you come out side to side. You then need to repeat this longitudinal bite, so you're going to go in around the same place on the other side and come out in the core. By coming out the side and going in on top, it will create a visible loop. This isn't a big distance between here and here, it's literally just behind it. So you've gone in, come out on top, gone in side to side, come in on top, and come straight down. Then you need to repeat this process inside, come out on top. Now you're going to go side to side. So you're going to go in here and come out here. By coming out on top here and going in on the side there, it recreates a loop, and you come out there. You need to recreate the longitudinal bite. So you're going to come out here and go in here and exit out here. So by coming out the side here and going in here, it creates a loop here. So you can see here there are two strands. If you tie the knot here, that's one and that's two. That means you've got a two-stranded repair, which is acceptable. But as you know, or you may not know, but you will know, we typically like to do more than two strands. That can be four strands, that can be six-stranded. The modified Kessler can be performed as a two-stranded repair or a four-stranded repair. To make it four-stranded, rather than tying your knot here, you continue. So don't tie a knot, you leave that bit there, and you repeat the process again. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go out, I'll do it somewhere just adjacent to it so we can see it. We're going to go in here, here, and here. Let me get another marker pen. We're going to go in here, here, and here. You come out on top, you need to go side to side. which will create a loop here. You're going to go across, 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 and come in on top. That will create a loop here. Down, down, go all the way across. Going to recreate the longitudinal bite so it's just short of the first one. We'll talk a bit more about that in detail because there are a few extra things you need to pay attention to. So you're going all the way across, come out on top. You go in through the side and go all the way across. And then come in on top. So it's just a repeat of the same thing you did at the beginning. And now you tie your knot. So, the things you need to take account of. When you're doing this, you need to use a round-bodied suture. So I'm going to show you that. It's round-bodied. What that means is when you pass your suture through, because the body of the needle is not cutting, so I'll show you on this. So the body of the needle is round. It's got a blunted tip. And it's round here. So when you're passing your suture backwards and forwards and side to side, it is less likely to cut the strands of suture. That's the first thing. The second thing is this distance, so from here to here, the first one needs to be at least 1 centimeter. If you do it too short, when you're coming to make it a four-stranded, you're just going to be grabbing traumatized tendon. So you can either do this as a 2-stranded or 4-stranded. Both are acceptable. It depends on your personal practice. 2-stranded isn't too bulky, but can be quite strong and works very well in some people's hands with rehab regimes. Other people prefer to have more strands, increasing the strength, but it does also increase the bulk of the tendon repair. Ways to reduce the bulk of the tendon repair is to use a monofilament rather than a braided suture. And then also to make sure that your knots are well buried in the central substance. So, now what we're going to do is a simulated tendon repair. This is the tendon simulator from MedSync. We sell those, especially them in the UK only at the moment, I'm afraid. And we're going to use a 3-0 Proline core suture and a 5-0 Proline Epitendinous. So, I need to cut my tendon in the middle. So tendons are 3D structures. I'm going to do it at a distance and then I'm going to repeat it closer up so that you can see some of the smaller details. The round body sutures are typically double-ended. So mount the needle 2/3 along the way, pull the suture, you only need about half of it, so I'm going to cut it. One of the challenges with Proline is that it has memory, so it's all curled and coiled up. So what we need to do is remove that memory. And to do that, let me just mount this again. Do that, you hold it from the swage end, which is towards the back of the needle, and put some tension on the suture material. It takes out the memory and makes it lay a bit more straight, like so. So, next we're going to do the tendon repair. So as you remember, you start with a longitudinal bite, 1 centimeter in distance. So I'm going to hold my tendon just on the edge. Where it's already traumatized, hold it properly. You need to give yourself counter traction. So I'm pulling it this way. I'm going to apply pressure this way. My mounted position, my fingers actually aren't in the needle holder. They're just holding it like this. That way I can get good curvature. And I'm going to push. Like so. Leave an end. And then we're going going to do our side to side bite. It's in the central substance, so not too anterior, not too towards the back, right in the middle ideally. And then we're going to do a repeat longitudinal bite in parallel to the other one. This needle is quite long, so you have to really follow the curvature and go from a mix between in and out. So I'm going to reposition this a little bit because it's just on the sidewall. Again, I will do a closer up angle when I come to do it. And I like that position better. It's right next to the other one, right in the central substance. That's really nice and tucked in. And then I let go of the tendon. Just gonna stick this back down. That is probably a good position right there. Okay, now the other side. What you also can do is put a clip on the suture to keep it out of the way, but that needle holder will fracture that prolene. So I'm not clipping it here, I'm clipping it here, and then I can cut that off before I tie it. Because if it's fractured by the clip, it's not going to tie very well. And so now I'm going to do it in parallel to the other that I finished with. One longitudinal bite, 1 centimeter distance. It's not quite a centimeter. I'm going to go a bit longer. That will do. And then it's a transverse bite towards me. So I'm holding it like this. I'm going to now change the position. I'm going to turn the needle around. And I'm going to go across. I'm going to now unlock the ratchet. Don't get caught in the loops. Focus on the needle. I'm going to pull it through. Like so. But I'm already mounted, ready to go. I will go through some of these tips and tricks on how to remount your needle, but unfortunately it's going to be in the extended member session, which is after this session. That'll be at 11 o'clock. So if you want to become a MedSync mentee, you can learn these extra nuances that will make you look like a pro in front of all your bosses. So that is the 2-stranded repair. So if I tie it here, just bringing all the suture through. If I tie it here, that makes it 2-stranded, but I want to make it 4-stranded. That's my personal preference. So I'm going to go again. It has to stop just short of the first repair. Again, grabbing it where I've already grabbed it, so I'm not causing too much additional trauma, minimizing handing. I'm using a round body needle, so it's not going to cut my other suture threads out, I hope. And you go again. Anticipate your next step. Be flexible with how you hold your needle holder. So now I'm going from a mounted grip to a palmed grip. I'm going side to side. I'm keeping a hold of the tendon. Put my ring finger in, then my thumb, then disengage. We covered some of these techniques last week's session, or the week before in the last live session, and this is where it becomes useful. Again, I'm going to go now to a palmed grip, so I can suture backhand. Some people's wrists will move with the needle holder in it. Mine fingers and needle holder, mine will not, so I palm mine. So the position of that is too lateral. You can see it poking out just there, so I'm going to just change it and redirect. I'm not going to come all the way out, I'm just going to redirect it a bit more centrally. I'm happy with that. And there we are. Don't grab the tip of the needle as you blunt it, and then it'll be even harder to pass. A round body needle is harder to pass than a cutting or reverse cutting. But if you use a cutting or reverse cutting, you're at risk of cutting your suture threads. I will do this closer up in a minute. So in the core substance, just short of your other, anticipate your next step, so how you're going to hold the needle holder. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to take my fingers out. I'm going to turn the needle around and come across. can see, I'm trying not to keep taking the knee forceps off and keep grabbing the traumatized end, because that's how you cause more scar and adhesion. Try and get a really good grip to keep yourself some counter traction to your suture movement. Okay, and then the last bite, just behind this one, exiting in the central substance, like that. All right. Now, put it together, but when you tie it, you're going to tie it this way, otherwise you'll be distracting the scar, the tendon ends if you tie it like that, so you're going to tie it this way. This is where it's important to do nice squared knots. As mentioned, I'm going to cut this off. So I've got a nice unfractured end, and you have to be really, really square. In terms of economy of movement, forcep in your web space, it's just a 2-finger job, like so. If you push it like this, it forms the curve for you. Needle holder in the middle, 1, 2. Not 1, 2, this big wrappy movement. It's just a small wrap around the tip of the needle holder. Grab the very tip of the suture and you gently creep this in, and it approximates really nicely. I'm going to do the square knot now. I've taken out the memory, so I know there's no excess in there. And then, because it's a monofilament, it's 4 to 6 knots. I tend to do 5. And one more. Bonus tip for you here. I like my knot to stay really buried, so I cut the short one. Always cut your, even if you're teaching other people to do it, you can palm this like so. You know, I like this trick. If you've watched anything from MedSync before. You want to bury the knot. So cut your knot yourself, your sutures yourself, even if you let someone else do it, the repair, so that way you can only blame yourself if it cuts out. I will now take a bite in the central substance, like if you did an Epitendinous knot. And really make sure that that knot is tucked into the central substance and less likely to catch on the pulley system of the fingers and they're getting cut. So that's the core repair. Now we need to zoom in and do another one. So when you finish tendon repair, you test the gapping and the glide, but this isn't finished yet. We haven't done an epitendinous. So I'm cutting it out, and I'm going to do another one, so you can see it nice and close up. I'm going to take a fresh suture. If your suture cuts out in the middle of the tendon repair, just redo it. Don't waste your time trying to, put some extra stitches in it. If it cuts out or, it breaks, just do another one. I'm going to take the other half of the tendon suture, the 3-O-proline. As I mentioned, take out the memory by holding this. So you have the point, the body, and the swage end. Hold the swage end so you don't pull out the suture, and pull the suture material till it becomes straight. So this is how I'm pulling it. Counter traction, and it lies straighter. I need to give you a close-up view now, so I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. It's gonna be a bit of turbulence. It's quite smooth, I have to say. Again, after this session will be the extended session for MedSync mentees, where we'll go through some of the economy of movement maneuvers that can make you go from beginner to pro. Talk about the pulley system as well. And some extra tips that I have based on my own experience. You can join the membership in the member section. There's different levels. You get early access to some YouTube shorts, early access to any pending videos, and then the exclusive live content that we do on here. So let's position that so it's central. So 2/3 along the way, hold the tendon where it's already cut in the core substance like this. Take a 1, so this is my hand position. 1 centimeter bite minimum. Follow the curve. Try and anticipate your next step so you know how you want to hold your needle holder. I'm going to put a clip on that end once I've done this already. I'm now going to take my fingers out and go side to side through the side substance of the tendon. Follow the curve. I'm going to put my ring finger in and then my thumb. Push it through further. Don't grab the tip in a rush. Mount the needle just the once ideally. Take my fingers out again. I'm going to plant it in the tendon and then reposition my hands so I don't have to let go of it. Let's see where it's coming out. It's coming out of the side. I don't like that, so I'm going to try and redirect it without coming all the way out. And so now it's coming out of the middle. I want it a bit more to the side. That will do. You just want to minimize how many times you go in and out of the tendon. Now follow the loop. I can see I'm going to get caught there, so rather than get into it later, I'll deal with it now. Okay, now I let go. Now I can put my clip, or if you have an assistant, they can put the clip on when you're doing it. Put it on at the end of the suture so that when it fractures, you can just cut, well, you can cut it off before you start tying your knots. I could have pulled it through a bit further. That would be better use of the suture. And we're going to do the other longitudinal bite. Remember, it's 1 centimeter in the central substance. It's a bit long. Do let me know. You can pop it into the chat. And I will try and answer them. Follow the curve. And this is simulating a flexor tendon. So the flexor tendons are more three-dimensional than extensors. So extensors typically don't require a core and an epitendinous. I'm going side to side now. With extensors, you can just do an epitendinous or a horizontal mattress or a figure of 8 stitch because they're flatter, so it's typical. It's harder to get a core and an epitendinous. The only tendon that tends to require a core and an epitendinous that's an extensor is EPL, extensor pollicis longus. That's in the 3rd compartment of the wrist, and it's a bit more tubular. I really like this position. It's coming out through the central substance. It's coming out in parallel to where I started. I'm gonna continue with that. Again, if you have any questions, do let me know. I will try and answer them. So as I mentioned, when you go across once, that is a 2-stranded repair. Because if I tie the knot, there's only 2 strands going across. But I prefer to do a 4-stranded. A 2-stranded is more than acceptable though. It's all about your preference and your practice, or just what your boss wants. So this is a modified Kessler, so I'm going to make it a 4-stranded repair by just continuing without tying. So a longitudinal bite. You can see my suture's going to get caught. Followed by a transverse bite. Side to side through the central substance. Finish it with a longitudinal bite. to lateral, so I'm just going to reposition that. If you see my hand position, I'm holding it like this, I'm stitching backhand. And there we are. I don't grab the tip, I grab the body. Through and just proceed straight ahead. Now, one of the hardest things about tendon repairs actually is the retrieval of the tendon. We'll talk a bit more about that in the extended session about venting pulleys. This is the MedSync brand of needle holder. You can find it on the website. I'll pop the link into the description, or you just go to medsyncltd.com/medshop. And this is the needle holder that we use. It's got a really nice fine tip. It's tungsten carbide, which means it gets better grip than your standard. And I've had this for about 3 years so far, and it's working just fine. So we're gonna go side to side. If you subscribe to the MedSync website, it's free. You get sent a 10% discount as well. Now a longitudinal bite to complete the 4th strand of the repair. Try and look to where your tendon, your sutures are going, so it was going across a bit too deep surface. So the mistake to make here would be to put the needle holder through this loop and pull this. I'll get caught in a knot. So the loop's on top here and there's a loop underneath. So don't do that. Take your needle holder out and pull. And that completes the 4th strand. So I'm going to cut this off. Some people hand tie these. Again, that's up to you. It's personal preference. I'm quite happy with my but hand tying is also good. Keeps you control of tension and you can tie at depth. Tying knots, it's standard. Needle holder in between. 1, 2. Try and grab the tip of the short suture. So it's not a big movement, it's a fine movement. 1, 2, grab the tip. Look at the thread, that's not square, that is square. Pull, 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 pull till the end of the tendon kiss. I took out the memory. If you don't take out the memory at this point, there'll be excess tendon suture inside the tendon, and then actually when you come to test it, it will gap. So you want to take out the memory at the start. 1, we're tying in parallel to the cut, because if you tie it in parallel to the tendon, perpendicular to the cut, you'll distract the ends, so you'll be tightening the thread, but distracting the tendon gap. We don't want to do that. Talking about fracturing, so if you look at this, you see it's got a kink in it, and you can see the kind of where I've gripped it, that's it fractured, so it's a point of weakness. So that's why I don't want that to be anywhere near there. That's why I cut the ends off. As I'm tying the knots, I get closer and closer and closer, because it's a point of weakness rather than a useful point of manipulation. It's a monofilament, so again 4 to 6 knots, I do 5. So this is the core suture. Now we need to zip an epitendinous. One tip I'm going to give you guys in this session is, this, my old friend. So you're here, you cut, take your thumb out, push it down with your index finger, and keep it there. Tip ideally not going into your hand when you flex your wrist. The actual tip is, I bury my knot, so cut your own suture, and then take a bite inside the tendon, like an Epitendinous knot, so that the knot gets pushed flush into the tendon substance. You don't have to do it. I think it's a nice finesse point. Now the suture. And then cut. So that's the core. Now we need to do an epitendinous. There are different kinds of epitendinous. The two I use are the silver scald and the continuous. So typically you get a double-ended suture, but you cut it in half. This is a single, which is fine for me. Same principles apply. I'm going to put my scissors down. Same principles apply. Hold, so the point the body and the swage. Hold the swage and take out the memory from the suture. If you don't, you'll have lots of excess. You want it just to be a bit straighter. Like so. And this is a 5/0 proline. So in the finger, your tendon will run like this. The problem with this is that if you do it in this order, so the core, pedal, and epitendinous, once you've done the core, you can't necessarily easily flip the tendon because it's attached to the muscle in the forearm. And you've got pulleys around, so it's not so easy to flip it. So typically, you do the back wall first, so you start on one side, finish on the other side. Then you do your core, and then continue with the suture. So I would do the back wall, leave my suture ends, they'd be something like, they'd be sitting there, short one there, untied at the beginning, and a clip on this end. I'd be sitting here. I do the core in between, and then at this stage, I would continue. So in the finger, you do the back wall, the core tendon repair, then the front wall with epitendinous. In the wrist, however, you can do the front and then the back and turn it. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna try and do a continuous on the back wall and a silver scold on the front. So to do that, I'm gonna start over here. Let's see how we go. I'm starting inside to out. I'm put a clip on this so that it's available for me later. I'm doing the hardest part first, which is the back wall on the far side, because it's nicer to get these things done sooner rather than later. I have better access to do it now, I think. Okay. So I'm under there, and I'm under there. So what you can do is hold the suture and tension it for yourself, rather than continuing to grab the tendon. I'm going to come out in the middle, and I'm going to pull the sutures either side. I'm going to try and mount it straight away to increase my speed. And that's the first one. I'll do the same next to it, and it's small bites on the side. The epitendinous adds 20% strength to your core, and it tidies up the outside. You can do a continuous the whole way around. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to do a continuous on the back wall and a core, a silver scold on the front, just so we get to see the difference. Bring my sutures all to one side. Like I said, it's easier to do the back wall first, then do the core, and then do the front wall. But I thought you might enjoy seeing me struggle a little bit, so doing it this way. And then I'm going to bring this around like so and continue. This takes a bit more work. So I'm doing the back side of the tendon. It's now a bit trickier, that's okay. Doing the back wall on the far side. And this is where, if you don't pay attention to where your suture threads are, you get caught in loops and it gets a bit messy. Just focus on the needle and where it's coming out and going in. Okay. Again, still on the back wall, using the tendon, the suture to distract the end so I can see where I'm going. It's just a small bite on the peripheries to tidy it up and add 20% strength, as I mentioned. I'm trying not to grip the tendon any longer because I don't want to add scar to the ends. Just keep an eye on your suture ends so you see where everything is. And here we are. So now I'm coming up to the side and I can see better. I'm going to do the silver scald, which I will spell for you in a second. I'll write it. It's got an umlauter on the O. So, the silver scald, the direction you're passing the suture is opposite to the direction which you're moving in. So I'll show you what I mean. So, I need to get to here. So that means I'm going to stitch this way. If I'm stitching this way, my needle movement is going to be this way. And I'll show you how. I finished over here. So I'm going to move this way, but my needle is moving towards me. So small bites, they're transverse bites, like this. And they lay figures of 8. And you can see where it's going, like that. I'll carry on. So I'm moving closer that way, but my needle is going from far to near. But my direction of travel is towards my short end. It's nice figures of 8. Does it make a difference which you do? I don't know if there's any literature to support that. I think the silver scald has the ability to tuck the ends in rather than everting them, maybe a bit more because it's the figure of 8. But I don't think it makes too much of a difference which one you do. You just need to do an epitendinous because it adds 20% strength. It tidies up the ends and stops the ends from everting, which is important because otherwise you'll get them caught on the pulleys when you're testing the function. A bit too far. Don't let the needle come and cut the other sutures. So you're kind of just going in between the gaps and adjacent to each other. And here we are. Again, the mistake here would be to grab it from here, then I'll get caught in a loop. So I'm pushing the suture this way, grabbing it like this, and going. So now I'm going to tie my knot. Now, ironically, if you saw as I was doing this, my first one pulled out. So I'm just going to do that one again. Let me do what I would do in practice rather than cheating. So that was my first bite that I did, but it came out. So I'm just putting that inside. Then I'm going to cut this off and tie our knot. So the first one was the back wall. I did a continuous, just over and over. The front wall, I've done a silver scald. Still a monofilament, so 4 to 6 knots. And again, cut your own sutures. Don't leave them too long. So when you're finished, you need to test the glide. So to test the glide, if you have the pulleys in the finger, which I'll talk to you about in the extended session, tendon is running underneath the pulleys, you can either check the tenodesis of the finger. So if I push on the forearm muscles, the flexor muscles in the forearm, the fingers flex. So checking the tenodesis would be checking that the cascade of the fingers with the tendon repair is as expected. The usual tenodesis is that the fingers all point towards the thenar eminence. So the tenodesis should be the same. The relaxed position of the finger, the tenodesis, the relaxed position of the fingers is such that the index sticks out a little bit more and they all kind of curl in a bit more. So when you're looking at the tightness of your tendon repair, you don't want this finger in here, you just want a nice relaxed cascade. You know a tendon's been cut because the finger will be sticking out like this. You know it's correct tension because it should be sitting like this. That's the cascade you want the fingers to be sitting in. You don't want the tendon repair to leave the finger inside there, it's too tight. So you want it just to be sitting like this. And then when you're checking the movement of the fingers, you want to, with the repair, you want to straighten the finger and let it flex again, straighten it and flex again. Where you have problems, it's called a problem with the glide, is if when you pull it out, it's a bit caught. Usually it's the tendon repair site caught on a pulley. So you may have to vent a pulley. We'll talk a bit about that in the extended session. It's available for MedSync mentees from 11 o'clock. You need to keep certain pulleys, you can afford to vent others. Or you might just find if you just tuck it in a little bit more, or tidy up. At least that's where the epitendinous is important, because it allows those ends to really sit in, less likely to get caught on a pulley. So you're checking for gapping. When you pull it straight, is the repair site gapping? So I'm pulling this reasonably hard and it's not gapping, so I'm quite happy with that. You're checking the glide so that you can get full excursion or range of movement of that flexor tendon. You check it passively by pressing on the flexors if the patient is asleep. If you're doing it under wide awake, local anesthesia, no tourniquet, they can do it for you. If the patient is blocked from the arm from a brachial plexus block, you can just squeeze the forearm and check the passive tenodesis. So you look at the cascade, it's not too tight, shouldn't be here, should be sitting like the other hand. You look for gapping, you straighten the finger, and that will also help you test for glide. Typically I'll do this 10 times so that I know that if it was going to rupture, it would have ruptured by now already. Alright, and then rehabilitation wise, you put your dressing on, so put your stitches in for the skin. So we've had to open it, non-adherent dressing, gauze wall, and then a back slab on the back of the hand. And that is your modified Kessler. We talked about it as a 2-stranded, we talked about it as a 4-stranded, and then the epitendinous. I showed you the continuous, which is just over and over and over, and the silver scald, which is transverse bites. Said I was going to spell it for you, so let me stay true to the word there. So silver scald is spelled. Look at that, my pen doesn't work just in time. Let me get another one. Silver scald is spelt I-L. Umlaude. Silver scald. That's one kind of continuous, one kind of epitendinous, and then the second kind is continuous. You can do either. It adds 20% of strength. Alright, and that is the end of this session. We'll see you next month for the next live session. Again, if you're a MedSync mentee or you want to be a MedSync mentee, you can join in the members area and we'll go over some smaller nuances such as how to access your flexor tendon, talk about the pulleys, which ones you need to keep, venting them, and some economy of movement maneuvers to make you go from beginner to pro. You can always watch the session in the catch-up, feel free to share with your friends and colleagues. Have a good Sunday.